Youngstown, Ohio, Murder Town, USA. For 14-year-old Matt and his friends, the abandoned steel mills held a dangerous allure. These skeletal structures, a sprawling labyrinth of rust and decay, revealed tales of the city's industrial past and something darker, the lingering remnants of the mafia's reign. But it wasn't just human shadows that haunted these ruins. Something ancient and hungry stirred in the darkness. What they found in those ruins would forever scar their young lives. Their obsession drew them to the blast furnace, a treacherous journey that involved crossing the busy Route 422, scaling a fence, and navigating a half-hour trek through the decaying heart of industrial Youngstown. Their sanctuary was a 4-story building, its first floor exposed to the elements, a relic of a time when molten metal flowed through its veins. Inside, they'd constructed makeshift walls from hundreds of shield-shaped metal fragments, a fragile defense against the harsh realities of late 80s Youngstown. Gang violence, the mafia's lingering presence, and the ever-watchful eyes of those still working in the nearby steel mill. Armed with an arsenal of unreliable firearms, a .25 caliber with a loose pin, a .22 caliber, and Matt's pilfered .38, they weren't hunting. They were simply trying to survive, driven by the restless curiosity of youth to explore and dismantle the remnants of a dying industry. Matt couldn't shake the feeling that the maulings weren't just the work of wild dogs. It was a warm June night, the air thick with the promise of summer. School was a distant memory, and the boys were fueled by the boundless energy of youth. Around a roaring fire built from scavenged pallets, they sat in a hypnotic trance, the flames casting eerie shadows on the crumbling walls of their sanctuary. Suddenly, the distant howls of what sounded like a wild dog pack shattered the silence. They scrambled onto a concrete outcropping, the remnants of a staircase long since crumbled away. Rebar snagged at their clothes, a reminder of the precariousness of their perch. From this vantage point, they watched as a pack of 6 or 7 dogs raced past, oblivious to their presence. The dogs were headed towards the railroad tracks that snaked through the industrial landscape, disappearing into the darkness surrounding a towering mountain of coke, a byproduct of steel production, rising at least 15 to 20 feet high and stretching for miles. Then, the sounds of a brutal, savage fight ripped through the still night air. At first, the boys assumed it was infighting among the dogs, the snapping and snarling a familiar soundtrack to their nocturnal adventures. But then, a growl rose above the canine snarls, a sound that resonated deep in their chests, a primal vibration unlike anything they had ever heard. It was low and resonant, like recordings of alligators and crocodiles, yet it possessed the haunting, chilling qualities of a wolf and a tiger combined. The air itself seemed to vibrate with it. Something else was at play. The dogs were yelping in pain, their cries echoing through the skeletal remains of the mill, each whimper a testament to the raw terror they were experiencing. 2 dogs came hurtling over the crest of the coke pile, thrown, not leaping, as if some unseen force had seized them and flung them with tremendous power. The first dog tumbled through the air, its hindquarters and tail pointed towards the boys, clearly tossed aside like a discarded toy. The second landed with a sickening thud, scattering coke dust and debris. Its left side, from shoulder to rib cage, was a raw, gaping wound, a testament to the sheer power of whatever lurked on the other side of the coke pile. Bleeding profusely, the dog staggered to its feet and limped away, a trail of dark crimson staining the ground, and Matt felt a pang of pity, hoping against hope that it would survive the night. More dogs were thrown, their bodies arcing through the air like rag dolls, their yelps of terror abruptly cut short. Then the rest of the pack retreated in terror, their paws scrabbling against the loose coke as they fled back in the direction from which the boys had come. As they watched the blood staining the ground, one of Matt's friends, standing to his left and slightly behind him, tapped him on the shoulder, his touch trembling as he whispered,
"Guys, what is that over there?"
Simultaneously, they turned to their right. Crawling, slithering almost to the top of the coke pile, was a creature so immense, so out of proportion to anything they had ever seen, that it seemed to defy reality. It was so large it looked like a figment of their imaginations, a monstrous hallucination born of fear and adrenaline. Matt would later replay the scene in his mind countless times, wondering if he had simply dreamt it all. But this was no dream. It was, in Matt's words, the biggest animal he and his friends had ever seen. All 4 boys, best friends since childhood, shared the same sense of stunned disbelief. The creature moved on all 4s, resembling a gigantic wolf, though its size and shape were more akin to a polar bear, but sleeker, more muscular, lacking the lumbering gait of a Kodiak grizzly. Its limbs were long and powerful, every muscle defined and rippling beneath its thick, dark fur. The creature paused at the summit of the coke pile, its gaze fixed on the retreating dogs, seemingly unaware of the boy's presence. Matt had the unsettling feeling that he could discern the creature's thoughts, as if it were communicating telepathically.
"I've spared you this time. Don't return to my territory."
Then, in a bizarre display of dominance, it lifted its leg and urinated, marking its territory. The sheer force of the stream, as it slammed against the coke pile, sent debris flying, the spray hissing against the coke like a torrential downpour. It was like a high-powered hose, the sound unnervingly loud, echoing through the stillness of the night. Matt, instinctively recoiling in fear, knew that any second the creature would notice them. But it was the eyes that had first captured their attention, glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light that seemed to pierce the darkness. At that moment, the friend who'd first spotted the creature stumbled, crashing into the makeshift metal wall with a resounding clang that shattered the tense silence. The creature's head snapped around, its gaze locking onto them. It wasn't eyeshine, it was something far more terrifying. An internal illumination, a yellow amber-orange light, emanated from within the creature's eyes, so bright that even at a distance of 20 to 25 feet, they could see the distinct anatomy of its eyes, the pupil, the iris, the very structure of its gaze. The light was so intense it seemed to illuminate the wall behind it, casting grotesque shadows that danced and writhed in the flickering firelight. It stared at each boy in turn, its gaze lingering, probing. When its eyes locked onto Matt, it felt like his soul was being dissected, laid bare. Every nerve ending in his body screamed in primal terror.
Something's wrong. Something is terribly, horribly wrong.
Then, it did something that shattered everything they'd been taught about the natural world, shattering everything they had learned from movies, mythology, and magazines like Fangoria. It was a werewolf, a real one. It rose onto its hind legs. He heard no noises when it stood. If it had seemed impossibly large on all fours, standing upright, it was doubly so. A towering behemoth that dwarfed everything around it. Matt's mind reeled, years of scientific understanding and common sense collapsing under the weight of the impossible reality before him. He felt a recurring sense of unreality, a desperate, futile hope that he was trapped in some fever dream. But he wasn't. This was real. The creature's dog-like legs were clearly visible, powerful and muscular. Its arms were exaggeratedly long, almost reaching its ankles, giving it the unsettling appearance that it could easily scratch its toes while standing upright. Its hands were enormous, grotesquely shaped like those of a raccoon, but on a monstrous scale. It wasn't covered in long, shaggy hair. The fur was short, perhaps an inch long, almost groomed, tight to its body, revealing every ripple and undulation of its massive musculature. It was black, a black so deep it seemed to absorb the surrounding light, making the glowing eyes even more prominent, burning like twin embers in the darkness. Massive lats, biceps, and the clearly defined, separated muscles of its quads were all visible, exaggerated beyond any human possibility, a testament to the creature's inhuman strength. It growled a sound that was both growl and roar, a guttural vibration that resonated deep within their bones, infused with infrasound that seemed designed to disorient and terrify. Matt felt it vibrate through his chest, weakening his legs from his thighs down to his ankles, making him feel as if he would collapse, sinking into quicksand. His friends experienced similar effects. The other two boys were bent over, one dry heaving, the other gasping for air, convinced he was about to pass out. The air itself seemed to crackle with the raw power of the creature's presence. The creature took 2 steps towards them, halving the distance in what felt like the blink of an eye. The movement snapped them back to a semblance of reality. Matt's friend, the one who'd first spotted it, turned and fled into the building, his feet pounding against the concrete floor. The others followed, stumbling over each other in their panic, scrambling up the stairs to the 3rd floor. There was nowhere to go. The 4th floor was a dead end, and the fire escape had long since collapsed, the lower sections, from the 2nd floor down, lying in a twisted heap on the ground. One friend, the one Matt would later have to physically restrain, went postal, his cries and screams echoing through the abandoned building.
We have to get out of here. We're going to die.
Matt, who was a bigger guy back then, driven by a surge of adrenaline-fueled fear, grabbed him around the mouth, covering his mouth and lifting him off the ground in a desperate attempt to silence him. He didn't even realize he had lifted him off the floor, his feet dangling in the air. His voice a harsh whisper, he threatened.
Listen to me. You're going to come with us, and we are not going to leave you here to die, dude. Do you understand?
He made his friend promise, his eyes wide with terror, not to make a sound. Just as they managed to calm their terrified companion, a heavy thump reverberated through the building, followed by the unmistakable sound of nails scraping against concrete. It was inside. They peered down from behind the half-concrete wall on the third floor, the fire below casting giant, distorted shadows that danced and writhed across the crumbling walls. The creature entered their makeshift sanctuary, its shadow engulfing the entire wall before its massive head and shoulders emerged, followed by the rest of its immense body. The shoulder blade rose and fell with each breath, surrounded by rippling muscles that seemed to shift and writhe beneath its dark fur. It sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring, searching, hunting. As it neared the fire, maintaining a distance of about 3 feet, saliva dripped from its open jaws, hitting the concrete with an audible splat. It wasn't just dripping, it was pouring, a testament to the creature's primal hunger. The sight gave Matt the immediate impression that it was poised to kill or devour, its hunger a palpable force in the air. It bared its teeth, the glint of white visible even when its mouth was closed, the canines protruding menacingly. The only other color besides the glowing eyes was a faint white stripe that ran from the back of its neck to its tail. Then another bizarre event occurred, further blurring the line between reality and nightmare. As its front left paw touched the ground near the fire, it briefly blinked out, cloaking for around a second, allowing them to see through it, like the Predator effect in the movie. Around the cloaked paw, a strange visual distortion shimmered, resembling the magnetic storms on the surface of the sun, further reinforcing the creature's otherworldly nature. It sniffed again, bared its teeth, and snapped its head up, its glowing eyes locking onto them. It knew where they were. It growled again, a low, guttural rumble that vibrated through the concrete wall and into Matt's hand. He could feel the tremor, a chilling reminder of the creature's immense power. Then, it stood again, throwing its arms out in a dramatic, almost comic book-like pose, muscles clenched, a sick, predatory smile twisting its features. It looked at them, growled, looked at the stairs, and back at them, almost as if it were taunting them, communicating its intentions telepathically.
I know how to get to you.
The gesture, so theatrical, so unnatural, solidified the creature's supernatural presence. It looked at them, growled again, its eyes burning into them, looked left and right, saw the stairs, and looked back at the boys. Matt felt a wave of icy dread wash over him. He knew what was coming. It dropped to all fours and charged for the stairs, leaping over the missing section with effortless grace. Its tail, thick and hairless, like that of a mountain lion, moved like a rudder, guiding its movements, providing counterbalance as it moved with terrifying agility. The bones in its legs and arms were grotesquely thick, further emphasizing its impossible size and strength. The way it moved on all fours was unsettling. Its front arms looked wrong, as if it was running at an unnatural angle, adding to its disturbing appearance. When it had stood near one of the building's 4 to 5 foot wide supporting pillars, they later estimated its width completely obscured the pillar, and its height reached 10 to 12 feet, the ceiling at that point being around 15 to 18 feet high. As it ascended the stairs, 2 of Matt's friends succumbed to sheer panic. One ran in circles, screaming incoherently. The other bolted for the stairs to the 4th floor, disappearing from Matt's sight. Another friend ran for the fire escape. They could hear his feet pounding against the metal staircase, a sound that was quickly swallowed by the rising tide of terror. Matt, frozen in place, stood next to his remaining friend, who later confessed he had simply been paralyzed with indecision, unable to move, unable to think. The creature reached the 2nd floor in seconds, moving with the fluid grace of liquid metal or oil, a beauty to it, like a panther, then began its ascent to the 3rd. Whoever or whatever was coming up those stairs, Matt would meet first. He was directly in its path. He and his friends were convinced they were about to die. Matt was certain this was the day he would die. His life flashed before his eyes, images of his family, his dog, his hopes for a future high school football career. It came within 6 to 7 feet of him, its glowing eyes burning into him, or perhaps his friend behind him. Then, in a moment Matt could only attribute to divine intervention, a train passed by, doing something that never happened. It yanked on the chain that caused the horn to sound. The creature stopped, its attention momentarily diverted. It looked at Matt, did a double take, then glanced at the opening where the train was visible. It looked back at him, its expression a mixture of frustration and rage, as if it were thinking,
Damn it, I want him, but I can't get to him.
The boy screamed.
Someone save us.
But the train continued on its way, its sound fading into the distance, taking with it their last vestige of hope. The creature turned and descended the stairs, reaching the first floor in a matter of seconds. Then, another supernatural event occurred, something that defied all logical explanation. It transitioned from a physical being to a shadowy streak, its form blurring, its movements no longer discernible. It was no longer a creature of flesh and blood, but a shadow person or being. Losing all recognizable form, it was gone. They waited, huddled together in terrified silence, for what felt like an eternity, every creak and groan of the abandoned building a potential sign of the creature's return. An hour passed, each minute stretching into an agonizing eternity. The air hung heavy with fear, the silence broken only by the ragged breaths of the traumatized boys. Arguments erupted, fueled by adrenaline and terror. The most shaken of the group, his eyes wide with a lingering fear, wanted to stay hidden, convinced the creature would return. The others, desperate to escape the nightmarish scene, pleaded with him to leave. Finally, they physically dragged him down the crumbling stairs. Matt's best friend, his face contorted with fear and desperation, grabbing their shirts, choking them slightly in his panic, pulling them out of the building and into the cool night air. They jumped down from the concrete outcropping, each landing a jolt of fear, convinced the creature lurked just beneath them, waiting to snatch them from the darkness. They ran, arm in arm, for what felt like an eternity, the half hour it took to reach Matt's friend's house, every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig, fueling their terror. Every pebble one of them kicked, every gust of wind that whispered through the trees, sent shivers down their spines, making them believe the creature was gaining on them. They scrambled up a steep gravel hill, their hands and knees digging into the rough ground, slipping and screaming in their desperate flight, constantly asking each other,
Is it behind me? Is it still there?
Reaching the relative safety of the house, they collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath, drinking water until their stomachs ached, their eyes wide with disbelief, staring in the direction they'd fled from. Matt felt a wave of nausea wash over him as he recounted the horrific events of the night. One friend didn't speak for 2 weeks, his silence a testament to the profound trauma he had experienced later, requiring psychiatric help. One friend continues to struggle with major mental issues, a lasting scar from that night. 2 others have since passed away, their fates perhaps connected to the darkness they had glimpsed in the ruins. Matt, deeply affected by the encounter, sought counsel from a priest at St. Maron's Church. The priest, to Matt's surprise, believed him immediately, confirming that there are things beyond human comprehension, things that lurk in the shadows. Speaking of demons and the rituals of exorcism, they decided to tell their parents the story together, seeking some form of comfort or explanation. Most of their parents dismissed the story as the wild imaginations of frightened teenagers, their words falling on deaf ears. However, the father of Matt's best friend, a man who held a position of authority in the city, overseeing the police and other departments, reacted with a mixture of anger and fear. He warned them never to return to the mills, threatening them with juvenile detention and social ridicule if they dared to speak of the encounter again. He implied he knew what they had seen, confirming that it was likely responsible for the recent maulings of 2 homeless men in the area, their bodies found torn apart in the shadows of the abandoned mills. He called Matt's father, sitting them down together, his face grim, warning him to silence his son, fearing the story would attract unwanted attention, drawing others into danger and ruining Matt's future. He painted a picture of Matt becoming the laughingstock of his school, branded as a lunatic. Matt's father, deeply disturbed by the encounter and the man's reaction, forbade him from discussing the encounter with his siblings, instilling in him a fear of God regarding the creature and the secret they now shared. A week later, Matt's best friend confided in him, revealing that his father had confirmed he knew about the creature. He'd received calls about it. 2 officers had even claimed to have seen it, its shadowy form fleetingly glimpsed in the darkness. He believed it had killed at least one of the homeless men, its hunger insatiable, its presence a terrifying secret the city desperately tried to bury. The abandoned steel mills of Youngstown, once a symbol of industrial might, now held a darker secret, a chilling reminder that some shadows are best left undisturbed. Decades later, the mills still haunt Matt's dreams. He still wrestles with the memory, the chilling certainty that it warned him. Though the damage is undeniable, 4 lives irrevocably altered, 2 lost, 1 broken, Matt refuses to be defined by the scars he carries. If you've encountered the unexplainable, faced the darkness, and lived, DeadNetStudios wants your story. Share it at deadnetstudios@gmail.com. And together, let us illuminate the shadows where truth and terror meet.
In the shadows of the digital night, we wandered far and seen some sights, from haunting tales to eerie lights. DeadNetStudios where fear ignites. So long, farewell from the crimson hollows. We'll be back again with more tales to follow. Keep the lights dimmed and your curiosity high. For in DeadNet's realm, the spirits never die. We've danced with ghosts, chased legends on, through cryptic codes, stories untold. In cyberspace where mysteries unfold, our journey's been daring, brave and bold. So long, farewell from the darkened halls, where shadows whisper and the unknown calls. Keep your eyes wide and your mind astir, for the mysteries of DeadNet are a haunting blur. In the world of strange and the unexplained, we find our stories wildly untamed. With each video's end, we take a little rest. We find the shadows every best.